Welcome to you, Mr. Khattar. I'm really
Thank you, Ashita. Thank you for having me.
So we'll start with, there's just one question which is there in my mind to ask you about, how COVID-19 has changed the customer expectations from particularly the brand, and what are the challenges you see in the F&B sector at large because of the,
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, as much as we would like it to, I don't think life is ever going to be the same again as it was in the pre-COVID era. What one has seen is, earlier whenever one was referring to a restaurant or eating out, it was always about kya khana hai, what is the flavor that you like, what's the kind of food that you like. The particular restaurant offers, very good variety, or it's very good for a family setting, or it's very good to go out with friends, and so on and so forth. And even across, FMCG brands, the choice was ye tasty hai, ye healthy hai. Those were the only one or two metrics that one had. Unfortunately, it's no longer going to be limited to only these parameters going forward. The way I look at it, there's going to be a third parameter added, and that parameter is going to be safety and hygiene. So customers are going to evaluate brands, they're going to evaluate restaurants, eating spaces on on the parameter whether or not they perceive it to be safe and hygienic and good for their family. Apart from all the other parameters of taste and flavor and variety and so on and so forth, there's going to be this added parameter going forward. And to me, that is going to be the biggest change. And businesses would need to adapt to this new reality. That is, of course, just one part of it. The second part of it is that consumer behavior is no longer going to be the same. For instance, if you talk about eating out or restaurants or food service space in general, there was a fair bit of consumption that was linked around celebrations, and celebrations were about group of people getting together and going out to eat, whether it was a group of college friends, or whether it was a group of office colleagues, or whether it was a large family with the elders and the young and the absolute youngsters and infants. There were large groups going out to eat together, and that that was a pretty large proportion of the entire consumption basket. But going forward, we see that celebrations are going to be muted. It's not going to be the same, large celebrations, boisterous celebrations. I don't see that, at least for some time, in the immediate future. Maybe a year later, after a vaccine is found, the reality could be very different. But till such time, I think celebrations and the size of celebrations is going to be limited. That is one point. Now, typically, if you take out the older generation and you take out the absolute younger generation from the mix, then what you're saying is that my consumption or my sale over the next couple of months is going to be muted. So that is another part to the whole thing. Of course, we also know that the size of things like wedding celebrations or banquet functions, etc., is also going to be curtailed. Right now it's absolutely curtailed. Some states have allowed celebrations or get-togethers up to 50 people. We don't know how it's going to pan out from here. Is it going to be increased from 50 to 100? So you're going to see much smaller wedding sizes and so on and so forth. So all of this is going to have a cascading impact on not just the economy, but also on the food service environment in general. Customers' preference for healthy eating in general, things that, foods that build immunity, etc., etc. That obviously customers are already, going towards that direction. I only see that pace accelerating, going into the future. So I think these are some of the very obvious changes that I foresee in consumer behavior, in consumption, and specifically in the food service area.
Sure. True. So the consumers will start preferring safety and hygiene.
So safety bhi, hygiene bhi, taste bhi,
And just to add, Mohitji, I think you put in a very important point, and I feel that another big impact which would happen is that now people would trust even more the established and well-run.
Yes.
So that's,
Yes, in fact, that was the unsaid because brands that have established themselves over tens of years or hundreds of years, those brands have stood the test of time and stood the test of many a pandemic and many a safety concern in that sense. And to that extent, brands that can give that confidence to customers stand a better chance than brands which are, let's say, either upstarts or which don't have an established record in this area.
and the classic example is that when Wuhan opened up,
Yes.
Chinese never went to Chinese restaurants, which they all used to eat out. They went to KFCs and the McDonald's.
Right.
Because they trusted in you. Because when you walk into brands like KFC or McDonald's, you have full faith that they would
Absolutely.
put the last effort.
Absolutely. Another example from Wuhan, I'm glad you mentioned that. Another example from Wuhan is that the category that saw the highest increase in sales was canned food.
Yeah,
because canned food is perceived to be safer.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right? And I think those, pretty much the same trends are going to come into India as well as I see it once the lockdowns, really start opening up.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what happening. And I think people are trusting more established brands rather than experimenting on, which they started in between.
Right.
Brands which are what I call the neighborhood brands or what I call local brands.
Yeah.
I think we again a shift which would come from what I call the brands which would offer warmth and competence. And when I say warmth and competence, it's a great marriage for franchise brands because franchise brands have a lot of competence because they're globally run companies and so on and so forth. And because they are local from a franchisee viewpoint, the franchisee himself is a local, he understands local conditions, local culture and so on and so forth. He brings a lot of warmth. So it's a great shift which we
I think very, very well said. Very well said. I don't think that anybody can play that, play this game better than a local franchisee actually. It is relatively tough if you don't own a known franchise brand in that sense. Because you have a twin hurdle in front of you. First is the challenge of creating that customer confidence that you have established processes and established safety, hygiene procedures, etc. That is one, and the second part is then having the local warmth, etc., etc. They may have surplus of that, but they may not have the first.
Absolutely, and I think the combination of that would work now, and people would really trust the combination of this of localization with backed with a strong competence.
Right.
Either of that would not work now.
Right.
Ashita, your next question, please.
Past, about 22 years, I've seen, the large companies and the mid-sized companies largely do the change. So the change management, is something that they really believe in. So we've made a kind of a 3P system for it. And we believe that every organization changes in that. So wanted your perspective on it.
I'm sorry, Ashita, you'll have to repeat your question. I lost bits and pieces of your question.
Your organization is Sure. So I'm saying that, I witnessed that there are some large and mid-sized franchisors who really design their businesses in 3 tiers, for themselves and their consumers and their partners, which is franchisees or even the suppliers. So what is it that, you look forward to, has been changing in your organization around these 3 Ps, which is, products, processes, and priority, of course, which is a consumer. So how do you oversee that?
And specifically with reference to the current situation or in general you're talking about?
In general, I think in the change, businesses are changing faster than we know. And
yes.
One of the areas which I think the organization you're leading today has globally very strongly adapted. We have seen all the avatars of Baskin, because I still remember the first Baskin franchise we sold used to have these 31 flavors and 3 large Ben Marys, and the capex used to be 50 lakh rupees. and people used to, it was a celebration going to even a Baskin outlet.
Right. So I mean, coming from there, if you really look at over the last 25 years that Baskins has been around in India, from ice cream being a complete celebration and the whole family going out together to eat, etc., etc. Obviously, the consumer has involved, the retailing landscape has evolved, and it is not the same specifically when it comes to large towns where there are multiple options available to a consumer to either go out or to celebrate, etc., etc. And businesses like Baskin Robbins, what it was 25 years ago, it has got repositioned, not by not necessarily by what we did, but also because of the evolving landscape around you. So it does not make any sense at this point of time to have huge stores for ice creams. It makes sense to have smaller stores to begin with. Now that has a twin impact. One is the fact that I can open many more of those. I can, a customer doesn't necessarily have to travel 10 kilometers to go to one destination to celebrate. He can actually go just right next to his house, maybe a kilometer or 2 kilometers from his house. So that is the first impact. And the second most important impact is that for potential franchisees, the cost of investment, the entire investment is much lower, and the break-evens are therefore much easier. In a smaller town, the context can still be very different. In a small town where, let's say, we're just about entering, it's still a celebration of sorts, and still you don't want the smallest outlet. You want possibly a decent size where a family can still come out and celebrate, and so on and so forth. It's like maybe what Bombay was, a couple of decades ago. So that is, of course, the first aspect. The second aspect is that what we have to bear in mind is that the consumer preferences are changing and they are evolving. Their palates are evolving. What was good 20 years ago is not necessarily the same today. Of course, there are people who like the same thing over a 30-year period, but there are emerging consumers, the newer consumer segments, the youngsters. Their palates are far more evolved. And they, there is a liking for the either the international flavors, or there is also emerging set of consumers who like the Indian flavors very, very strongly. And as a brand, we need to keep pace with our TG. We need to ensure that we have the flavor set that will get in the customers that we are targeting. So whether it's a bunch of fruit flavors in our collection or the chocolate flavors that we are known for, etc. So the flavor portfolio itself is an ever-evolving thing. It's not set or cast in stone. It's evolving with the preferences of the consumer. So one is on the business model side, the second is on the flavor game side. And then, of course, as an organization, you keep evolving to keep pace with your franchisees and franchisees' expectations, and ensure that you've built an organization that is resilient enough to stand over a period of time.
Yeah, sure. And I think this is also, we've been doing a lot of these webinars and reaching out, and I will share with you that this is for franchise organizations is a perfect time, because we all struggled, and you would know more than I would know, that most of the time we used to get these franchisees who were investors and never looked after their businesses, never operated.
Yes.
And
that is a challenge even now, Gaurav. We find many investors, who possibly want to open a store and want to open a store with, minimal supervision at their end. That is what they expect. That, if I just put a boy there, he'll kind of look after the store. But fact of the matter is that any food service is also a business of passion. In that sense, it's a unless you are fully involved and unless you are really taking care of your customers. For the customer, every interaction in your store is a moment of truth. And if that moment of truth is spoiled, or if his celebration, howsoever small that celebration might be, if it is spoiled, he's not going to come back to you again. And that's something that, we keep telling our franchisees and we keep educating them, but it's a tough ask.
Yeah, but now I will say that a lot of operator franchisee will get, because what will happen is this, because of the changes, the career options being limited, a job market very, very poor, or job losses would happen. You will see people who would be franchisees and fold their sleeves and actually serve ice cream themselves. And when this starts happening, that will be the greatest time for brands like yours, because you will get strong operators who would not mind running their own business and controlling their business, controlling their own thing. And then it becomes, business model also becomes interesting, because it's not only return on investment, it's on return on your time also. Because
completely.
Your structures are better.
Completely.
This model it becomes even more robust and
right.
And I would also, because Ashita is, I didn't see Ashita being there, but I will ask very important question. Ashita, okay, she's back.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I'm sorry I got disconnected for a couple of minutes. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, the relationship, between the company as well as the franchisees, understandably, thinking that both are into a so-called an entrepreneurship mindset, So if you talk about organizations and entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs, so the mindset is different. So sometimes it gels very well, but sometimes it doesn't gel very well. So how do you look at it?
So see, the way I look at this is that, first of all, as an organization, there's a certain responsibility that we have of bringing the franchisee into the system and, ensuring that the franchisee, it's like bringing a child into the world. You kind of hold the child's hand initially and ensure that the child starts walking. And when that start happens, you kind of let the child grow. But you are always there to look after the interests of the child. And that is what our role as a parent is to, it's to kind of ensure that we set a good system in place for the franchisees to grow. We ensure that, whatever obstacles we can take care of, we should take care of. But at the same time, you also expect the franchisees to put in, their hard work, their effort, and, their relationship building in growing the business. Most of our franchisees do that, but there are always exceptions. But in general, the paradigm is that we have a certain responsibility to our franchisees and they have a certain responsibility to the business and to the brand, because, they are the flag bearers of the brand in the eyes of the consumer. Anything that is not up to the mark, just assume for a moment, if you were to have a great experience in the store, for you, it'll be Baskin Robbins, which has done a fantastic job. And conversely, if you didn't have such a good experience in the store for whatever reason, right? For you, it will be Baskin Robbins that did not make you have a good experience. It will never be about that one individual. It'll be, oh, this guy, he didn't speak to me correctly, or he did X, or he did Y. And therefore, I didn't have such a great time. And since they are the flag bearers of the brand, our responsibility is to ensure that they understand brand expectations very, very clearly. And what we as a principal of the brand in this market, what our expectations are, they must understand. On us, the responsibility also is to ensure that everybody is trained well enough and everybody is audited well enough on this particular aspect. And we have an entire audit procedure wherein we audit all our franchisees every month. We give them a score, we give them the improvement areas, and it's a continuous improvement process. It's not something which is done at a period of time. And we also have a reward structure which is kind of inbuilt. So if you score above a certain level, there is a certain reward which is linked to it, and so on and so forth. There is no penalty, but there is a reward structure. So that is at one level, the relationship. At another level, obviously, in times like this, the responsibility of the brand goes up a little, a notch higher, because you have to ensure that your franchisees survive during this time. It is a tough time for everybody. So there are X number of things that are expected of us as a principal, especially during this time. I don't know whether we can meet all the expectations, but our intention is to ensure that we do the things that are required to make franchisees stand again on their feet and, come back to the pre-COVID era. That is what our, initiatives are going to be centered around.
Yeah, it's a very difficult time, and I completely agree with you that their challenges are multiple, where reopening businesses itself is a challenge.
Oh, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, Gaurav. And, unfortunately, what happens is that, unfortunately, there is no magic wand. There is no one stick which you wave and everything will come back to normal. Absolutely. That is one. Nor are there unlimited stashes of money, neither with us nor with the government. I mean, as you know, the government has not even announced any specific policy initiative for the retail sector or the food services sector, knowing fully well that, 10% of the country's population is involved in this particular sector. And, there could be immense hardship, which everybody could face if this was not taken care of. But nothing specific has been announced, at least so far. I'm sure, representations are being made and hopefully something might come in the near future. But at least as of now, there is nothing. The challenges faced in the sector are immense. I mean, we all know that. I mean, rentals is an issue. How do you pay salaries is an issue, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple levels of challenges. How to stay afloat, during this time when you have no sale. I mean, that itself is a big challenge for many food service guys. Not necessarily, I'm not talking specifically about Baskin Robbins, but in general for everybody. And obviously, what the brand needs to do has to ensure that everybody stands on their feet, or maximum number of people are able to stand back on their feet. And that is what our initiatives are going to be around.
And how do you think this whole space of consumer purchase behavior changing in terms of, is it in your category in specific or overall, because you have a much larger and wider an audience should know that you built much bigger canvas chains in retail chains, especially your experience with Godrej and likes of them. So what do you see this real sense of hyper local or super hyper local kind of a capabilities, how direct to home kind of capabilities, how they all going to evolve, and do you see and you working towards creating those capabilities within Baskin Robbins also?
Okay, so see, the one thing which is very certain is that these lockdowns are not going away anywhere. They would possibly be open for some time, and again, cities could get locked up and so on and so forth. So it is critical for the business to build those capabilities. Fortunately, we had got onto that journey a little earlier, not just in the last 1 year or so, but we have been on this platform, on the online delivery, online orders, and delivery through aggregators or delivery through your own boys and so on and so forth, about maybe about 2 to 3 years ago. And steadily we have grown our share of business through that channel. Now that's both good and bad. There are both pros and cons to that. But fortunately, we had caught that trend that there is a section of consumers who are very convenience oriented, and they would rather, order from the convenience and the safety of their house rather than, step out. Specifically in the large cities where traffic can be a huge concern or parking can be a huge concern, etc. So that trend now with, the new context of COVID, that trend is obviously going to intensify. It is not going to come down. Therefore, building greater avenues for sale where you can, get your orders online and deliver. That is, of course, one aspect. The second aspect, and which is where I see a huge opportunity, is this, direct to society kind of a possibility. And that is something which is best executed by the, by the last mile guy, which is by the franchisee. Let's say if a particular franchisee is based out of whatever market, let's say Gurgaon or Powai or Bandra or, Anna Nagar in Chennai or wherever he is. The ability to cater to that catchment lies with him, right? Then it's a question of, very local marketing initiatives and local delivery. So local marketing initiatives can be all, done. There are various tools available to the marketing team today to do very hyper local communication. That is possible. What you need is a tie-up for one boy to go start delivering in that catchment. And those are things that we are experimenting currently. I can't say that we have, done a great job of it, but we have got onto the bandwagon, and we are quietly kind of rolling it out across various of our, various franchisee segments wherever they operate. So we are in the process of rolling that out, but in the future, very rightly put, I think that's going to be a huge opportunity. Especially for the customer, there's nothing better that, he gets everything right in his society where, where he's located, and not just him, many people in the society get the same product.
Absolutely. And I think in your sector and particularly now talking on franchise side, because that's what Franchiseindia does, I think I can clearly see that your franchisee, while in the food service, would be the least impacted versus other food service brands I know, because for them to bring change in any form of that is either requires a very different or their new capex, or they would require to change a lot of product menus and so on and so forth. But
right. I think that's very right. And, from our perspective, what we've decided is that, so there is some capex that, we are also trying to put in, but that capex is largely to build customer confidence on the safety and hygiene aspect. And the cost of that capex, obviously, we have no intention to put that on the franchisees. That will be completely borne by the company. it's something, the role of which is essentially going to be to tell the customer that, we have taken care of our processes. And these are the X number of things that we are doing, whether it's something as simple as a pedal operated sanitizer, or to a UV machine where your product is sanitized before it is handed over to you. So whatever the equipment is would be invested by the company and given to our franchisees. But as you said, the last mile delivery, that is where challenges are still there. Many challenges, because for many franchisees, our manpower has gone away. Manpower that was not based out of the city has kind of gone back to their homes. That is at one level. And at another level, you still have players like Swiggy and Dunzo and so on and so forth, who are doing the last mile delivery for you. So it requires more tie-ups and so on and so forth. Online, of course, presents its own challenges, because the margins that you end up parting to them is not exactly a very pleasant scenario, and that's one would like to conserve as much of it as possible. So it's like a double-edged sword. You if you do it, there is a problem. If you don't do it, there is a problem. But at this point of time, I think that's still a better option to be invested in, rather than not having it at all.
Yeah, and I think that going forward, the margins are only going to come down, because
Yes.
I feel that the biggest e-commerce platform would become your WhatsApp. And
Yes. And that is something, and that is something which is still in its infancy right now. It is still operating out of one guy doing it, rather than companies, doing it at a company level. So I think we are in a good space to, if I was to use the word exploit that in some way, purely because, we have 700 franchisees who can each do it in their area. So we are building the templates for the same. And we are saying that, here is it, go target your customers. Fortunately, we also have a good customer database. Again, over the last maybe 3 years or so, we built in a pretty large database of customers who have bought from us and who buy from us regularly, etc. There is a loyalty program in place. So we fortunately know how to target our customers. And that's something which we hope will work well for us going forward.
Absolutely. Ashita, over to you.
So, coming back to, do you see any, consolidation happening within the industry in between the groups or brands, something like a co-brand?
Very possible, Ashita. Very, very possible. I mean, it's not exactly a very pleasant situation to be commenting on, because it kind of rides on the fact that many brands might shut down, and many businesses, especially the smaller businesses, might shut down purely because they may not be able to tide over the current period. And that therefore opens up possibilities for other brands to acquire them, and so on and so forth. So that is a possibility, and I do see it happening. Hopefully over the next maybe 4 to 6 months, we will start seeing a lot more action in that space.
Yes.
And therefore that also kind of, prompts the need for businesses to do the right things to conserve cash and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
this is an opportunity for a much seasoned and a well-established player like Graviss, because you are in a very strong operator than you started, and sustainability of a network for 25 years itself is a big ask in franchising, because the businesses evolve and products evolve and so on and so forth, and now already in the 2.5 decades, it's a full generation cycle you've seen.
Right.
I think it will become an opportunity for operators like you to really see and guide through, and this can create an advantage, not in maybe short term everybody would have a pain, but in a long term, I think your franchisees would be much more benefited than a lot of other opportunities.
Right.
And you would also, are you doing something for helping? I mean, like the Domino's, I've heard that send 900 notices to landlords and say whatever comes through and whatever corrections we are able to do. Because I am always telling all the franchisees which I am talking to and say, you're thinking about a short-term loss. Short-term loss is this 3, 4, 5 months of cash flow loss, or maybe a little bit of challenges you get. But imagine if you use this time creatively for relocating or renegotiating your rental, which would have impact for next
100%. It is so critical for food service businesses for the simple reason that rental is the largest component of cost. I mean, it could be 40-50% of your entire OPEX. and it kind of determines your, your profitability at the end of it. The difference between, let's say, a Domino's and us would be that Domino's runs their stores themselves, and whereas we run it through our franchisees. So we have issued a guidance to all our franchisees through our teams that please ask them to start, renegotiating on rentals. It's easier said than done, but directionally, that's the way to go, because that's where the opportunity lies.
Absolutely. And even if I tell everybody, if you save 15,000 rupees in your rental, which is for next 3 years, you see the kind of gain you have for 3 years or 5 years to come.
Right.
This would be much higher than what you would have lost in these.
Our own experience. So there are a couple of stores that we run ourselves, and all our office spaces, etc. That we hire from assorted landlords in cities. We have had a good experience in that. We've been able to kind of bring down the rentals wherever we've negotiated. So we are pretty clear that that's the way to go, and that's the way to go not just for us as a company, but all our franchisees who are in the system. They have to go back to their landlords and renegotiate, and therein lies the biggest opportunity.
Absolutely, I think that's a great.
Yeah.
Ashita,
also there are there are other smaller avenues of cash conservation. Which lies in, for example, higher variable component to salaries. So rather than having only fixed salaries for their staff, if you make a larger component variable, then to that extent, it's linked to your sales and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think, again, most of the franchisees I'm advising and saying, start operating your own business yourself. The biggest value addition you can bring.
100%. I mean, not just will they have a greater idea of what is happening on the ground, they would be able to cut down things like, your inventory control becomes a big thing. How your inventory is getting used, how much is getting wasted, how much is getting pilfered. Even that, comes under your eye. How much cash is getting pilfered. I mean, you would know everything if you are involved yourself. And so no question about that.
The operator runs it, there's 6 to 7% absolute efficiency
increases. Yes.
6% in a business of retail or in food service is probably 50% of your margin, which you play around. Everybody plays around 15, 16, 17% return on sales kind of a model. And if 5% increase in that actually changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it.
Great. That's a brilliant takeaway. So start taking pride in your businesses. Be an entrepreneur. In between that, I have a question from Shrimata. It's an interesting thought that she's asking you that how many women entrepreneurs do you have so far in your network, and do you provide anything for women entrepreneurs extra than what you do for men entrepreneurs?
We believe men and women are equal, but having said this, currently less than 10% of our network will have women franchisees. Most of the franchisees tend to be men. We have some pretty successful women entrepreneurs who are with us, specifically in the southern region of the country, eastern region of our country, and we have a few in and around Bombay and in Pune, etc. also. But these are, typically numbers which we can count on our fingertips. So it's roughly about less than 10% of our entire network.
Okay. All right. And there's one more question which is related to it is Aman is asking whether do you look for more penetration now as far as franchisees are concerned, and do you offer them anything little extra to kind of encourage them to become your partners now?
Specifically in the in the post-COVID era?
That's right.
Okay, so we've not changed any policy as of now, and as of now, we've put our looking at new franchisees on hold because our entire effort is to ensure that our existing franchisees, come back and open their businesses and so on and so forth. But it's a good question, and I do believe that since the scenario could be a lot tougher, we may need to roll out some incentives to find newer entrepreneurs and newer people who are interested in investing with us. So it's not something that we have articulated at this point of time, but we would do so, and we would circulate that, going forward. Hopefully over the next 1 month or so, we hope to crystallize our thoughts on this piece. But directionally, yes, the terms could be slightly better, if you're looking to invest with us now rather than investing with us earlier.
And also, there can be another thought. I mean, this I'm advising to a lot of companies which run their own equity stores also. At this moment, it would be also great if you look at giving your equity stores as a franchise, because what happens, they have a history of performance on that businesses, and it is great for a new entrepreneur because he is now getting into a business which was on that location and there was a history of performance, and they are able to run a store. So, and they have no so to say gestation. Whenever the store opens up, they can be up and running, and they don't have.
One of the important things, Gaurav, for us, it is not about getting any investment or any entrepreneur who's coming our way and who wants to open a business. From our perspective, somewhere along the discussion that we had a few minutes ago, it's also about having the right kind of partner. It's about having a partner who's himself interested and passionately so in managing the business himself. If he's looking at it as a side opportunity which somebody else is going to run, or he's going to be in his office and one boy is going to manage it, that becomes very difficult for us to it becomes very difficult sometimes to operate a parlor or to make it grow. Because if the franchisee himself is not interested, how do you kind of manage it remotely? So that becomes a bit of a challenge. So I would still go easy. I would still not say that everybody who's interested in coming my way, I'm going to take him on board. We will have our own evaluation of the partners and of their motivations and interest, and then only decide, rather than expanding indiscriminately and then closing down 50% of the outlets that you so open over the next 1 year. I would rather open only 50% outlets and have all 100% of them operational.
No, that's a very good thought, and this is a directional change which should be done to get more operators in, people who are passionate about it. Rather, you will see, that's my own assumption, that in these challenging times, some franchisees would rise, and some of out of your 700 franchisees.
So in fact, what we have seen, these successful ones that we have, they run multiple stores. They don't run one store. They run multiple stores. Somebody runs 15 stores, somebody runs 10 stores, somebody runs 12 stores, and there are lots of them in the entire business, and they are all personally involved in all 15 of them. Right. It's not that they are not involved. They are able to grow because they are involved, and we would like people like that in the system. More people like that in the system. They manage their manpower well, they manage their stock well, they manage their customer relations well, they manage their stores upkeep very well. So when you have a mix like that, that's the kind of mix we know is what we desire.
Absolutely, and that's where the real consolidation within the network also happens. You will see some very high performing operators would go and help out the smaller, not so performing operator and say, let me partner with you or do with you, and I know how to run this business and shift.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, when we have couple of guys who are not able to operate it themselves and want to exit the business, imagine, it's no prizes for guessing who buys those stores.
Obviously, a good operator would buy that.
The guy who knows how to run it, he says, okay, I'll buy it, no problem. The location is perfect, there's no problem.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. I also own a master franchise for a global real estate broking company called Remax. And Remax is a listed company in US, one of the top companies. So our global head, the guy who used to run the Remax for 110 countries, was actually a Baskin Robbins franchisee.
Okay.
And he used to run Baskin Robbins 25 franchisees, and he sold that business for profit.
Okay.
And an executive position, because he had the experience of running from one store. He used to make himself, run a parlor, and then he built a chain, took it to about 25, and then he sold that as a business.
And lots of Indians are involved in running chains in the US specifically.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's how these businesses were grown. And both Baskin and Dunkin' there, they don't give even a unit franchise now. They 5 units you have to buy, and then they would give you franchise.
Right.
So it has.
So we've still not reached that stage, but I do believe that directionally that's where we are headed ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashita, over to you.
Yeah, so one question that we have from the audience, which is repetitive, is that do you look for drive-in outlets? Since in these times people might prefer just a drive-in and take the thing right from the outside, so they don't need to go anywhere. Do we
So
see?
as of now, bulk of our business comes from cities, from markets, standalone stores in market areas, etc. We have a few stores on the highways, etc. But very few of them are in a condition that we could call them drive-in. So they are not necessarily drive-in at this point of time. Could they ever, could the standalone stores in the cities become drive-in? The condition of our roads and our traffic in general is such that they possibly would not. But can we do things to enable customers to have, let's say, contactless delivery, and customers can order on their app and so on and so forth? Yes, those are possibilities. So can we convert, or can we do things through technology or through automation to enable customers to pick up stuff? They order on their phone, and by the time they reach their outlet, the product is ready and they can pick it up. Yes, those are possibilities that we are looking at right now.
Okay, great. So it would affect a franchisee as well in.
So it would keep the business model going for the franchisee. He doesn't have to make really any extra investment. All he needs to do is to have the app on his phone, and the rest is what will be done by the company. In terms of development of the software and development of the process would be done by us, and then we just kind of push it to our franchisees and to customers.
Sure. There's one more interesting question that they're asking: that do you collaborate with food brands who are not into ice creams? Since Indians have a great sweet tooth with them, so do you do that, or is that a possibility now?
We've done some collaborations in the past. Not too many, but each of our collaborations that we do is, subject to approval by our principals in the US. So we don't do too many of them because the brand has to be, kind of in sync with, at least, in terms of the kind of audience that we're talking about. It needs to be similar. It can't be very, very different in that sense. And it should not be competing with us in any way. So it should not be in the sweet space. It should not be in the dessert space. It could be in some other complementary space, not necessarily competing space. So if these conditions are met, yes, we can collaborate. We have done so in the past with a couple of brands, and we could do so in the future. But as I said, each brand that we get onto a tie-up with has to be approved by our principals.
Sure. Great. And how do you feel? There's one of the largest franchisors worldwide. So what do you think are few best practices that you can let down in terms of having a good relationship with franchisees and motivating them to be on their own?
I would like to pick up your ideas on one particular aspect, biggest aspect, because I feel that when franchisees invest in their own business, they're very excited, and then they put all the money and they make as per the guidelines. And I've seen franchisees after running 2 to 3 years, they made money out of the brand. And if you tell them to even change the board or uplift some improvement or change a little bit on the outlet, they don't want to do it, and they want the franchisor to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get surprised. And I say, when you had nothing, you made no money out of this business, you were happy to put all the money. Now this business is giving you money. This is your business. And you don't want to put any dollar now.
True.
So how
Very
do you
true.
do this? And because you are a 25-year-old brand, it needs evolution. It needs refreshment. It needs to go, outlets have to become next level. So what are the best practices you would like to do? How you manage the situation of what I call channel management, channel relationship, motivation, and whatever? Over to you.
So multiple things. I mean, the first is the guiding principle that the entire template of bringing franchisees on board, which includes, right from, first when we sign up a franchisee, from there, right from, let's say, store design to implementation of the store, we kind of take care of that and ensure that the store is set up as per the brand guidelines, so to say. That is point number one. Point number two is post, once the store is set up, in terms of training, how to run the store, whether it's training of the shop boys or of the franchisee in terms of what are the things to look at and so on and so forth. That entire thing is done. So the training, hand holding, as I would say. So that's the second part. The third part is to ensure process compliance, ensuring that, all processes are as mandated, whether it's a process of measuring temperature of the ice cream every 1 hour or every couple of hours, whether it's ensuring that, all stuff which is expired is kind of eliminated from the store, or whatever that process might be. each process has to be done exactly as mandated, and for that they are evaluated both monthly in a known manner and through mystery shopping at least once or twice a month, right? And those feedbacks are collated and then shared back with them in terms of this is what we found, this is what you need to improve on, and so on and so forth. And we have a reward mechanism which is linked to positive outcomes, no penalty for negative outcomes so far.
Yeah, but sometimes hard decisions have to be taken.
But sometimes hard decisions have to be taken specifically for repeat offenders.
Yeah, absolutely. I call it the firm and the flexible rule.
Right.
Non-negotiable. Anything which fits and hits the brand is non-negotiable.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so this is in a way, what we typically do to handhold all our franchisees through the process and ensuring that they operate in a certain manner. Of course, then it comes to refurbishing the store or in terms of initiatives to improve their business. So for instance, if we find that, let's say there is a new product opportunity, which is there for them to improve their sales by X percentage. Now for that, there's a certain CapEx required. We handhold them again, we support them by making part of the investment so that the process is eased for them, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple things that you keep doing. And then of course there are plans and programs that you roll out every year to ensure that, you move to the next level and the next level and the next level. So broadly, we move in that direction. Whether it's collaterals, for customer communication, whether it is your material in which you are dispensing to a customer, because customer expectations keep changing, Tomorrow, yesterday I was happy receiving my cup in my hand. Tomorrow I'm not going to be happy about it. I don't want anybody to touch it. I want it, in a carry bag, or I want it in some container, or so on and so forth. Or I might want a sanitizing wipe. Customer expectations can be very, very fragile and ever changing in that sense. And we need to keep pace with that. And we don't always expect franchisees to invest in everything. We have been handholding them through this process. The big change that I expect, going forward, specifically in the area of food service brands, is that the demand for portion controlled or factory packed products is going to increase. When you scoop, there is some kind of contact that happens, but if it is factory packed, to that extent, it is safer. And demand for such products could increase. Now, obviously, we need to see that, and we need to ensure that we are able to supply enough. So there is continuous handholding and process support, on an ongoing basis. I don't know whether you can say that about each and every brand, but that's at least something that we try and do. This does not mean that all our franchisees are always happy. Yes, there are complaints at various points in time, and which always, becomes an impetus for us to keep doing better and better.
Sure, I think there always would be different opinion, and
yes,
there is also a limitation. People should know that you are a master franchise. You don't own the brand, so you have to adapt to things which can be of the choice or the ask of the franchise. You have to follow the system which you have inherited.
Right.
You only run on the principles of that.
Right.
Ashita, more questions are pouring in. So any questions you
want
to
Yes. So Amit wants to know a bit more about ice cream. So he says that Indians have, again, the sweet tooth, and they have a lot of options in sweet. How the ice cream or the so-called frozen dessert you feel is taking up and will take up in future in comparison to the other things available? And of course, one thing more that he hinted on is the weather. That, I'm sure from the
hot country. So
winters, yes.
So, so there are two ways to answer this. The first is that in general, if you look at ice cream consumption in India, it's still pretty low. We are possibly number 17th or number 15th in the world in terms of the per capita consumption of ice creams that we have in the country. It's just about 350 to 400 ml per person per year, which is less than one tub of ice cream per person per year. In the US, it's possibly 5 times or 6 times higher. Even in China and all, it's significantly higher than us. We have over the last couple of years been seeing a pretty good growth rate. So our CAGR typically has been about 10 to 13% as an industry. Now these are pretty good indications for the growth of the industry in the next few years. So it is a good industry. Number one. Number two is that if I look at it from the perspective that, it's a frozen category where the product is stored at -18. So the chances of any external bacteria to grow in that temperature is significantly reduced. And therefore it's a much safer product to consume, especially in the current context. It's possibly much safer than a pastry, which is stored at 4 degrees or which is stored in ambient conditions in many, many cases. It is much safer than that, than a frozen product stored at -18 degrees. So both from the consumption mindset in terms of the fact that the industry has been growing very well, it's a hot country, we know that standards of living and standards of earning have been improving in our country, and to that extent consumption of ice creams is only bound to increase. So that's at one level, and at another level, from a safety perspective, it's a safer category to consume, and therefore everything is directionally pointing to the fact that it's a safe industry, it's bound to grow. There may be a minor blip during these couple of months, but hopefully it'll all come back.
Sure. Great. So Amit would be happy to know that he can have his cups of more ice cream and popsicles.
Absolutely.
These times.
Absolutely.
So I understand, Mr. Khattar, apart from this, just a break there, I understand you're a foodie yourself.
Yeah.
Coping up nowadays.
I'm sorry?
How are you coping up nowadays, not being able to go out and...
So, I'm a Punjabi at heart, and being a Punjabi means I love food. So it doesn't matter which part of the world the food is from, or whether it's street food or restaurant food or home food. I love food in general. Yes, of course, the pressure is on the family in these days. And we've been trying our hand at various things. So that's how we've been coping. Hopefully we'll start ordering out soon, as and when, most of the restaurants start delivering. But yeah, that's how it is.
That's great to know. So, we share the same thing. We all Punjabis love our...
Oh yeah, we love our food. So it doesn't matter.
Yes.
We'll figure out a way.
Yes. No, I can imagine, during the lunch...
One thing I've been ordering very consistently is ice creams. So that's something very, it's always there in the freezer. And
I particularly envy you for that. I've got 2 girls at home, and their demand of ice cream is something that I've never been able to meet up with. So I'll probably connect to you onto this.
Completely.
So I think it's been a wonderful session. For the attendees, some of the questions which are not being answered, which I'll personally write to Mr. Khattar and seek his answers for you guys, and we'll come back to you. But I think it's been a wonderful session. Something that you would want to say, to our attendees for the last one, GM for you as well, if you want to say something to our attendees, the final word on the industry and the partnerships.
So Ashita, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and it was a pleasure speaking with both you as well as Gaurav. Gaurav is such a authority on the subject himself, so it's always a pleasure to speak with him. The only thing I would like to say is that the current times are tough, but tough times don't necessarily last, and we just have to ensure that at this point of time we need to stay steady. We need to ensure that we are doing the right thing so that we are alive and we are kicking in the next couple of months. And contrary to what I said at the beginning of the thing, that there is no magic wand, I do hope in my heart that there will be a magic wand, and this situation will get over pretty soon. I'm very, very confident, though that's the one thing that I'm very confident of, that the moment we have a solution to this issue, to the pandemic, and even if there is half confirmed news of a vaccine, our sales will pick up very, very fast. I don't think that's going to be a challenge. I think consumers are also fed up in some ways of this lockdown and of being confined at home and so on and so forth. So it's a matter of time, but we just need to be firm during this period, ride out this period, and the future is going to be bright for all of us. That's what I have to say.